In August of 2017, the largest casual dining chain America had ever produced stood in front of investors and admitted it was closing as many as 135 restaurants before the year was out. Sales were falling off a cliff. The customers were gone. 2 months later, the company revealed its rescue plan, a margarita that cost $1. To understand how the king of American dining ended up pouring dollar drinks to stay alive, you have to go back to a bar in Atlanta in the summer of 1980 and watch two people build something the entire country would fall in love with. And then watch the people who came after them take it apart, one decision at a time. Bill Palmer was a restaurant guy. He'd worked his way through the business and landed on an idea that sounds obvious now, but wasn't then. American dining in 1980 ran on 2 tracks. On one end, you had fast food, cheap and quick and eaten in your car. On the other end, you had real restaurants, the kind with tablecloths and prices to match. In between, there was almost nothing. Bill and his wife T.J. wanted to live in that gap, a place with a bar, decent food, and prices a family could handle. A place you could walk into on a Tuesday without an occasion. They opened it in Decatur, Georgia, just outside Atlanta, and gave it a name that sounded like it had been there forever. T.J. Applebee's, RX, Edibles, and Elixirs. The name was invented. The feeling wasn't. The Palmers understood something deep about the American suburb. It was lonely. The neighborhood bar, the corner pub, the diner where everyone knew you. Those things existed in cities and small towns. The suburbs sprawling across America in the 70s and 80s had houses, highways, and malls. They didn't have a living room. Applebee's would be the living room. It worked immediately. The food was fine, the drinks were cold, and the bill didn't hurt. And the Palmers dressed the room with intention. Photos of the town on the walls, local school pennants, knickknacks that looked like they'd been collected over decades, instead of ordered from a catalog. You weren't supposed to notice the design. You were supposed to feel like the place had history, even on opening day. Within 3 years, the Palmers had a second location, and a problem. Growing a restaurant chain takes serious money, and they didn't have it. So in 1983, they sold the concept to W.R. Grace, a massive industrial conglomerate, and stayed on to run what they'd built. Hold on to that moment, because it's the first crack in this story, even though nobody could see it yet. 3 years in, the people who understood why Applebee's existed no longer owned it. From 1983 forward, Applebee's belonged to investors. It would belong to investors for the rest of its life. For a while, that was fine. Better than fine. In 1988, 2 of the chain's own franchisees, Abe Gustin and John Hamra out of Kansas City, bought the whole concept from W.R. Grace. These were operators. They ran Applebee's restaurants themselves. They knew the customer, and they had a plan that would light a fuse under the brand. Franchise it. Everywhere, fast. They also gave the chain its full name, the one that told you exactly what was for sale. Applebee's Neighborhood Grill and Bar. The word neighborhood, written on the sign of a restaurant headquartered in Kansas and owned by nobody in your town. It sounds cynical when you say it that way. It didn't feel cynical when you were sitting in the booth. In 1989, Applebee's opened its 100th restaurant in Nashville. Think about that pace. 9 years from one bar in Georgia to 100 locations, and they were just warming up. In November 1991, Applebee's International went public on the stock market. Now it had Wall Street's money behind it, and the timing was perfect, because America was about to hand Applebee's the greatest gift a restaurant chain has ever received: the 90s suburb. New subdivisions rolling out across the country, new highway exits, new big box shopping centers, millions of families moving into towns that had been farmland a decade earlier. Every one of those towns needed a place to eat that wasn't a drive-through. Every one of those shopping centers had a pad site waiting at the edge of the parking lot. Applebee's filled them like water filling a glass. And notice how the machine paid for itself. Applebee's corporate didn't build most of those restaurants. Local franchisees did. An operator in Ohio or Texas put up the money, built the building, hired the town's teenagers, and mailed a royalty check back to Kansas every month. Applebee's grew across the entire map while spending a fraction of what that growth should have cost. When franchising works, it's the closest thing business has to a perpetual motion machine. Remember that, because the same machine has a reverse gear. The formula was ruthless in its simplicity. Take the same building, the same menu, the same bar, and drop it into every suburb in America. Fill the walls with local photos, sports jerseys from the high school down the road, street signs from the town you're in, so that every identical restaurant felt one of a kind. Then say it out loud in the slogan, the one you can probably still hear in your head right now. Eatin' good in the neighborhood. That slogan wasn't decoration. It was the entire business model in 5 words. Applebee's wasn't selling riblets. It was selling the idea that this place, this exact booth, belonged to you and your town. And America believed it. Birthdays with the clapping servers, first dates that couldn't afford anywhere nicer, Little League teams in muddy cleats taking over 6 tables after a win, the bar crowd watching the game because the game felt better with other people, half-price appetizers after 9. In 1998, Applebee's opened restaurant number 1,000. No casual dining brand had ever grown like this. Chili's, Bennigan's, TGI Fridays, Ruby Tuesday, they were all playing the same game. Applebee's was winning it. By the early 2000s, it wasn't close. Applebee's passed 1,900 locations and became the largest casual dining chain in America by unit count. In an industry where opening 100 restaurants is a triumph, Applebee's had opened 2,000. There were Applebee's restaurants in all 50 states. For millions of Americans, especially outside the big cities, Applebee's wasn't a restaurant option. It was the restaurant. You could measure the empire in pop culture. By the mid-2000s, Applebee's was Hollywood shorthand for middle America. The punchline and the setting whenever a movie needed to say, ordinary town, ordinary family, without saying it. Comedians mocked it, which is its own kind of crown. Nobody bothers making fun of a restaurant that doesn't matter. This is the peak. Remember what it looks like, because everything that follows is the fall. And the fall begins, as it often does, with a deal that looked like a triumph. Inside Applebee's corporate offices in the early 2000s worked a woman named Julia Stewart. She ran the domestic division, the entire US business, and she wanted the CEO job. She'd earned a shot at it. The board passed her over. So in 2001, she walked. She took the top job at IHOP, the pancake chain, a company a fraction of Applebee's size. And she waited. 6 years later, in July 2007, IHOP announced it was buying Applebee's International for $2.1 billion. The woman Applebee's wouldn't promote now owned the whole thing. The deal closed that November. The combined company renamed itself Dine Equity, and with more than 3,250 restaurants, it became the largest full-service restaurant company on the planet. The stock analysts called it a blue-chip brand, a sure thing, too big and too beloved to stumble. But look closer at what Julia Stewart actually did next, because this is where the machine that built Applebee's started running in reverse. To pay for the deal, Dine Equity took on enormous debt, and to service that debt, it made a fateful choice: sell everything. Applebee's owned about 500 of its restaurants, the flagship locations the company ran itself. Dine Equity sold nearly all of them to franchisees and kept the fees. Understand what that means. The company called Applebee's now owned almost none of the restaurants called Applebee's. It owned a brand name and a stack of franchise contracts. The neighborhood living room was now operated coast to coast by whichever investment group had bought the local territory, many of them loaded with debt of their own. Within a few years, the sell-off was complete, and virtually every Applebee's in America belonged to a franchisee. The company that owned the neighborhood promise had gone fully absentee. When a restaurant company owns its restaurants, it fixes the roof, retrains the staff, and eats a bad quarter, because it's playing a 30-year game. When a leveraged franchisee owns the restaurant, every dollar of maintenance is a dollar out of their own pocket. This year. You don't remodel, you defer. You cut a server on Tuesdays. You stretch it one more year. Multiply that by 2,000 buildings and let it run for a decade. That's the math that killed the shine on every Applebee's in America. Slowly, quietly, the booths cracked. The parking lots faded. The menus got sticky. Nobody decided to let it happen. Everybody decided to let it happen. Then the world changed outside the windows too. The 2008 financial crisis hit casual dining like a truck. Families who ate out twice a week cut back to once, then to special occasions. Applebee's answer was discounts, and the 2 for $20 deal, 2 entrees and an appetizer for $20, kept traffic breathing. But a price war has no winner. Chili's matched it. Everyone matched it. And the entire category taught America a lesson it would never unlearn. Never pay full price at a casual dining chain, because a deal is always coming. And while the old giants were discounting each other to death, a new kind of restaurant was eating their lunch. Chipotle, Panera, Five Guys. Fast casual, they called it. Food as good as Applebee's or better, served in 10 minutes, no tip, no waiting for the check. The entire middle of the market, the busy family on a Wednesday night, the office lunch crowd, started sliding toward the counter and away from the booth. Do the math from a customer's side, and you can see why the leak was unstoppable. A family of 4 at Applebee's meant 45 minutes, a tip, and a fight about the check. The same family at a fast casual counter spent less, waited less, and left when they wanted. The booth had to offer something the counter couldn't, and for 20 years, that something had been the neighborhood feeling, which was exactly the thing the deferred maintenance and the thinned-out staffing had been quietly draining away. Applebee's traffic didn't collapse, it leaked. Year after year, a little worse, a little emptier, the average customer a little older. And this is the moment. The empire is aging, but still enormous, still profitable, still in every town in America. The core customer is still there. Boomers and families and regulars who've been coming for 20 years. What Applebee's needed was somebody to love those people, to fix the buildings, sharpen the food, and honor the neighborhood promise it was founded on. Instead, the people in charge looked at their most loyal customers and decided they were the problem. The customers were too old, too suburban, too uncool. The future, corporate decided, belonged to millennials. Urban, affluent, Instagram in hand, and Applebee's was going to chase them. In 2016, Applebee's announced the largest single investment in its history, $75 million to install handcrafted wood-fired grills in every single restaurant, nearly 2,000 of them, all at once. Real USDA choice steaks, hand-cut on site. The advertising promised a bold new Applebee's, and executives declared the brand would, quote, decisively take back America's neighborhoods. Listen to what's inside that sentence. Take back the neighborhoods. The company was announcing a war for the very thing its own decisions had spent a decade hollowing out, and it planned to win with a steak. An 8-ounce wood-fired steak at Applebee's cost $20.99. The regulars, the 2 for $20 crowd, the birthday families, looked at the new menu and saw a restaurant that no longer wanted them. And they were right. That was the strategy, said out loud in investor calls. Swing the pendulum toward a younger, more affluent, more sophisticated guest. The younger, more affluent, sophisticated guest had no intention of coming. Millennials who wanted a great steak had steakhouses. Millennials who wanted fast, cheap food had Chipotle. What no millennial wanted was a $21 steak at the Applebee's by the highway, cooked on a grill the kitchen had barely been trained to use, in a dining room that hadn't been remodeled since 2004. The wood-fired bet didn't just miss, it detonated. The new customers never showed, the old customers took the hint and stopped coming, and same-store sales went into free fall. In early 2017, Julia Stewart, the woman who'd conquered the company that passed her over, resigned. The revenge story ended with the empire she'd won sinking underneath her. By the end of that year, Applebee's was ripping the brand new wood-fired grills back out of its kitchens. $75 million, installed and removed inside 2 years. The new brand president, John Sawinski, stood up that summer and said the quiet part into a microphone. Chasing millennials had been a mistake. Applebee's, he admitted, had confused its customers about who the brand was for. The company would go back to serving the people it had spent 2 years trying to leave behind. It's a rare thing, a corporation confessing out loud. It's rarer still for the confession to come after the damage is already unpayable. Then came August 11th, 2017. DineEquity announced that between 105 and 135 Applebee's restaurants would close by the end of the year, after sales dropped 7% in a single quarter. Around 120 died. Towns that had celebrated in those booths for 25 years watched the signs come down. For a lot of those towns, there was nothing to replace it. The living room just went dark. The company needed to win back the exact customers it had spent 2 years insulting. It needed an apology. What it came up with in October 2017 was the Dollarita. $1, a full margarita all month long for 100 pennies. And here's the uncomfortable part. It worked. People lined up. The internet lit up. Traffic came back, and in the first quarter of 2018, same-store sales rose 3.3%, the chain's best quarterly growth in 7 years, driven by actual customers walking through actual doors. The headlines called it one of the great turnarounds in restaurant history. But step back and look at what actually happened. The brand that once stood for the American neighborhood, the chain that IHOP paid $2.1 billion to own, had found its new identity, the place with the dollar drink. The Dollarita wasn't a strategy. It was a flare fired from a sinking ship. And the fact that it worked told you exactly how much the ship had taken on. You cannot discount your way back to being loved. You can only discount your way to being tolerated. And once you're the dollar drink place, you can never stop. The Dollarita kept coming back year after year, joined by Dollar Long Islands and Dollar Zombies. Each one guaranteed a week of headlines and a line at the bar. Every promotion worked, and every promotion tightened the trap, because the customers it trained were loyal to the price, and a customer who's loyal to the price is loyal to nothing. The moment the deal ends, so does the relationship. The years since have been a long, managed retreat. Every year, more Applebee's close than open. The chain that peaked above 2,000 locations kept shrinking through the pandemic, through the recovery, down past 1,700, past 1,600. In 2025, the retreat turned darker. One of Applebee's biggest franchisees, an Atlanta-based company running more than 50 restaurants across Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, filed for bankruptcy after closing 14 stores and failing to find a buyer for the rest. The company's name, and you couldn't script this, was Neighborhood Restaurant Partners. The neighborhood formally declaring it couldn't pay its bills in the same city where Bill and T.J. Palmer opened the first bar 45 years earlier. By the end of 2025, Applebee's was down to roughly 1,520 locations, and in that single year, its franchisees closed 110 restaurants while opening 73. The most visible growth plan on the table today is co-branding. Combined Applebee's IHOP locations, 2 struggling menus under one roof, the empire quietly folding itself into the pancake chain that bought it. So no, Applebee's is not dead. It's still one of the biggest restaurant brands in America. Somewhere near you, right now, servers are clapping around a birthday sundae, and the bar is half full for the game. It still matters to real people in real towns, which is exactly what makes the numbers so brutal. A quarter of the empire is gone. The slide has run for nearly a decade, and it has not stopped.
And the saddest part is that the thing Applebee's sold is still in demand.
Americans are lonelier than they've ever been. Sociologists have a name for what the Palmers built. They call it a third place, the spot that isn't home and isn't work, where a town actually happens to itself. Bowling leagues had it, barbershops had it. The suburbs that Applebee's conquered never had enough of it, and they have even less now that the mall is dying too. The product Bill and T.J. Palmer invented in 1980, the suburban living room, might be more needed now than it was then. People didn't stop wanting a neighborhood restaurant. They stopped believing Applebee's was one. The regulars were priced out on purpose. The buildings were left to age by owners who'd never set foot in them. The brand chased strangers and lost its family. And when it finally called them back, the best reason it could offer was a $1 drink. The Palmers built a place that felt like it belonged to you. Everyone who came after treated it like it belonged to them. That's the whole story. And it's the difference between a neighborhood and a franchise territory. One of them people fight to keep. The other one closes on a Tuesday, and the sign comes down, and the town it fed for 25 years just finds somewhere else to celebrate. Somewhere that still remembers what Applebee's forgot. The neighborhood was never the location. It was the welcome.